Hey everyone, my name is Riley and this video is a complete make.com tutorial for beginners. Now the first thing that we have to do is of course sign up with make.com. Now I will leave my partner link in the description of this video, and if you use this link when signing up, you will be able to sign up for a free account of Make. So we can go ahead and set up our account right here, and then it's going to ask us a few questions about what we do and what we want to automate. But honestly, these questions are not super important and they have no impact on your make.com experience. Just like that, I now have my make.com account, and this is the make.com dashboard. Right now, we are in the organization tab and we can drop this dashboard down. In here, it's just going to show us the current plan, how many operations we can have per month on this plan, how many are currently unused, and then we can see the amount of operations per day right here. So as an example, if I am creating a Google form and every time that Google form is submitted, I want that data to be transferred into a Google Sheet. Every single time that somebody fills that out and it goes through, that is one operation. We can go up to the top here and click into organization settings. And in here, we can change things like the organization name. So this is always a good thing to change. We can also change the time zone that we are going to be using Make in, and also our country. We then have a few different settings along the top. The main one to go into right here is going to be teams, and we can see the current team that we have. And if you do want to add any more teams, we can add different teams into this area. We can also go to users, and this is where we can invite new users into Make. So we can click on invite. And then all you have to do is enter in their email of the person you would like to invite, their name, the role that they are going to have within Make, and then we can add a note right here. Then once this is entered, you just click on save, and that is then going to send them an email with an invitation link. So they just click through, they sign up, and then they can join your Make team. These other settings aren't really important. This is just where we can go to up the plan if we need to at any time. We can see the payments that we have made in this area, any installed apps that we have, and then we just have variables and scenario properties. Then on this left-hand side, we can click into the team area. We can see the users that we have. We can go in and change the notification options. But down here, this is where we get into the real meat and potatoes of Make. In scenarios, this is where you will be able to see all of the automations that you have created. So of course, we can create multiple automations. For example, we might create a Google form entry to a WhatsApp message. So every time somebody fills in that form, you receive a WhatsApp message. This might be one scenario. And then another example of a scenario might be every time that Google form is filled in, you are going to receive an email. So you will be able to see all of your scenarios in this area. We can then go down to templates, and these are some pre-made templates that Make is going to create. So instead of creating a scenario from scratch, you actually might be able to find the exact scenario that you are looking for inside of these templates. Keep in mind that these templates are completely customizable as well. So if we want Google Sheets to Instagram, but we don't want this right here, well, we can just delete this. And then if we want to add an email onto the end, well, we can add this as well. So all of these templates are completely customizable. All we would do is we would look for a specific app or name. So let's say as an example, I want to find some Slack templates. Well, we can just search for Slack right here. And this is now going to bring up all of these different Slack templates. Either way, if you are using templates, what I would recommend is follow along with this video and create a scenario from scratch. This is going to give you a full understanding of how Make actually works, and you really need to know how you can create scenarios from scratch before we go in here and start using these templates. Because once you understand how to create from scratch, templates become so much easier. Then we have connections. This is just going to show you all of the apps that you have connected up and linked to Make. So in here, if you want to maybe remove an account or delete an account, you can do that right there. And then finally, we have webhooks, and these are things that you can use to trigger data instantly, but we will touch more on that later in the video. For now, to actually get started with a scenario, what we are going to do is go to the scenarios tab right here, and in this top right corner, click on create a scenario. This is going to take us over to the automation builder, and we can see all of the apps that we can get started with and that we can use to create make.com automations with. I mean, I can keep scrolling here and there is so many that we can use. But what you want to do, rather than scrolling through all of these, is just go to the bottom right here, and we want to search for the app that is like the base, where we are getting the data from. So in this example, just to show you what I am doing so that you can follow along, the automation that I am going to create is going to be a Google form entry where people can book calls with me, and then automatically I'm going to get Make to take these appointments and schedule them for me on my Google Calendar. So in this apps area, the first thing that we are going to look for is Google Forms, because this is where we are going to get the data from. So we can select the first application right here, our data hub. And once we click in, we have all of these different things that we can do with Google Forms. So create a form is going to create a new Google form. Update a form is going to update a specific form. But what I am looking for specifically in this video is watch responses, because this is going to trigger when a new response is received. So this is what I'm looking for. We are going to click into this, and now we can create a connection and link up to the app that we are going to be using. So we can click right here on create a connection, and because of course this is Google Forms, this is going to take me to Google to sign in. But as an example, if this was MailChimp instead, then you would just log in with your MailChimp account. So we can first of all create the connection name, and I'm going to go in and call this booking form. And then we can click sign in with Google. And now we can go ahead and choose the Google account that we would like to link up. Once the account is linked right here, it's now going to ask for a form ID. So it's basically saying, where do you want to pull this data from? What form am I going to look at to find this data? So this is the form that I am going to be using. This asks people for their name, their email address, the date of the call, the time of the call, and then any additional comments. So when it asks right here for the form ID, the way that we find this is going to be up here. So we just go ahead and copy this from the top, and then we can go ahead and paste this in. With Google Forms, this is actually a little bit more complicated in how we find the form ID. Just to show you, if I go for something else and we go for, let's go for ClickUp as an example. If I go ahead and connect up my ClickUp account right here, rather than having to go in and copying this code from the top, usually when you are connected with an app like this, it is just going to ask you like, what workspace do you want to pull this from? So usually it's a lot easier and you just select the workspace in the app, but Google Forms is a little bit different for this. So just to explain what that's about. Then the limit, this is essentially asking how many strings of data do you want me to pull? So if I pull this up right now, it's set to 2 automatically, right? So it's just going to pull the first 2, the name and the email. But I want a little bit more than this. I want the date of call, time of call, and comments. So in total, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 strings of data. So I'm going to set the limit right here to 5. And then click on OK. So now the first part is fully set up, and we have told Make that we want the data to be collected from Google Forms, this form specifically, and we need 5 pieces of data. So if I go back to my form and we actually now fill this out, you always want to make sure that you do this. We now need to create a test input just to make sure that all of this is working and give Make a little bit of data to work with. So what I'm going to do is just for this test one, we can call this test. Then I can say test@example.com. We will set the date to today's date, which is the 17th of October. And then we will set this to, let's say 4 p.m. And then for the comments, we'll say this is a test. Then we can click on submit right here. And if we go back over to Make, we want to click on run once, and this is going to try and run with the data that we have inputted. If this turns green, it was successful. If this turns red, something is wrong. So if we click right here on run once, we can see that was run successfully, and we can see the output right here. Now this output is where a lot of beginners are going to get confused when it comes to Make, but it's actually very easy if you know what you are doing. So what we want to do is we can see bundle 1 right here, and we can see the answers. So we click on this plus icon for the answers, and then we can see all of the data that we asked for. Now to find the actual comments, so this comment section down here, to find the actual input, we want to open this up, then go to text answers, then into answers, then we can click on 1, and then we can finally find the value. Now, Honestly, with all of this information, a lot of this is just for Make on the back end, and you really don't need to know any of this. It's just keep in mind that this is how we actually get to the answer, is we need to click in a few times down here to actually get the value, because most times the value is what we are looking for. This probably won't make sense of why I explained this like I did right now, but it definitely is going to in the next step when we create the automation. But either way, we can click in, and if we click through enough times to get right to the bottom, we can see the value and what I actually entered for each of these questions. So this first part has now been a success. The next thing that we are going to do is we want to create a new module, and we need to tell Make, when somebody fills in this form, what do you want us to do? And in my example, I want Make to take the information and actually book this call on my Google Calendar. So I'm going to pull up my calendar right here. As you can see, there is nothing on my calendar right now. So let's go back to Make and set this up. What we now want to do is click on this plus icon to add another module. And for this second module, of course, I'm going to enter in Google Calendar. So we can enter that in and we can click on it right here. And now for the event, we can scroll down here and once again, choose what we want it to do. So I'm going to say create an event. So we click on this and now it's going to ask me to connect up my Google Calendar. So because I already have this connected and I'm using the same Google account, well, I can just select this. I just need to continue and just give Make a few more permissions, just like that. Now we can say we want to create an event. We can choose if this is in detail with more information or quickly with less detail. We can then choose the calendar ID. So from my Google calendars right here, you can see I have my main calendar, holidays in the UK. It's basically asking which calendar do you want me to put the information in. So I'm just going to select my primary calendar right here. And then we can choose the event name. Now, for the event name, if I was just to call this like sales call, well, what it's going to do is it's going to be pretty confusing, right? Because every time it makes something on the calendar, it's just going to be called sales call. So if I have like 10 of these a day, that doesn't really give me much information. Of course, I would be able to click in, but I want to see this all at a glance. So with the name, I actually want this to be the name of the person that I am taking the call with. So the way that we do this is we already have that information because people are going to be entering it into this form. So for the event name, if we click in, we can see all of the responses right here. So this is why I mentioned earlier that we need to click through and we need to like drop down the menu to find the actual piece of data. So if I go to email right here, if I just select this, then what it's going to do is when this shows up on my calendar, even though I want the email, it's going to show collection like this. You see where it says collection? It would just say collection for all of my calls. So what we want to do is delete this, click down into email, go to the text answers and click into this, answers, and we need the value here because this is the actual value that I entered. So we can go for the email value right there, and that is now entered. We can then choose if this is an all-day event, which it isn't, it's just a short sales call. For the start date, once again, we have this information in the form when people enter in the date of the call. So what I'm going to do is click into start date, and then we can get rid of the email dropdown because this would just be a little bit confusing. For the start date, we want to go to date of call, drop this down, text answers, drop this down, and grab the value. Then for the end date, well, this is not something that I have asked in the form. So I'm going to leave this blank. And then the duration is something I also haven't asked. But I know that my sales calls are going to be half an hour. So instead of entering in this piece of information, I'm just going to say this is a 30-minute call. And then all of my calls on Google Calendar will just be booked to 30 minutes. So with all of these, you can just enter in plain text. Like I could just enter in a date into this if I wanted to, but we basically just fill this in. Do we have the answer? If not, we can fill this in manually. From here, we can then click on OK, and this automation should now be set up. So once again, we can go ahead and fill this out. Let's say that this is a call with James Smith at example.com. Let's set the date of the call to tomorrow actually. So let's set this to the 18th of the 10th, 2024. The time of the call we will set to 1 p.m. right here. And then for the comments, we will say looking forward to the call. So this is from Jim's perspective. James comes along and fills this out. And now let's go back over to Make. And we can click on run this automation. And this is now going to go ahead and look at this. Both of these were successful. So now if I go back over to my Google Calendar, we should have this down on the calendar, and we do. So this automation has worked. I actually made a mistake when I was creating this. I actually said to put the email here rather than the name. So we can go ahead and change this if we want to. We just click into settings, and right here for the event name, I accidentally put the email. So I'm just going to go in, and instead of the email, I actually want the name of the person. There we go. Of course, this is not going to update right here, but for the future automations that come through, that will now be updated to give the name rather than the email. So that is basic automations, right? And one thing you're probably wondering is, wait, but you clicked on this button run once every single time. So does that mean that I have to come in here and just click on this? No. The reason that I click this is because by default, this schedule setting is set to every 15 minutes, right? So what this means is every 15 minutes on autopilot, this is going to run through. So if we got responses on the Google form, then it would just run on autopilot. Now, what I would say is even if you don't have data in here, if this just runs blank, right? Because it runs on the 15-minute mark, but if nothing was filled in, it's going to run anywhere, right? It just wouldn't import the data. But on your plan, if I just save the changes right here, this is still going to use an operation. So if you're just firing blanks and basically running every 15 minutes, even though you don't have any data, well, that's pretty pointless. It's just going to run down your monthly operations. So if we just click back into the automation right here and we go to edit, what I would recommend is if you don't get many responses, you can maybe turn this up. So we could turn this to maybe every 60 minutes right here. And that's going to run through these a lot less. But you can't actually turn this down below 15. If I tried to set this to like 10, it's not going to let me. The minimum value is 15. So we can go in and just set this to 15 minutes. And the reason that they set this cap is so that you're not burning through your automations. So this is the basic automations, right? We just created an automation there. So now if we go back into scenarios, of course, we will be able to see this new automation. Right now, this is off. So we can just turn this on and this is now running. And then at any time, if we want to get back in, we can just click in right here, click on edit, and we are now back into the automation. So the next thing that we can do now that we have a basic automation up and running is we might want to set some filters in here. As an example, I might say with this example right here, I don't want to be taking calls before 8 a.m. and I don't want to be taking calls later than 10 p.m. So in here, we can go ahead and set up a filter. We just click on this little spanner icon right here and click on set a filter. And then in here, I'm just going to go ahead and label this, say working hours. And then for the conditions, what we are basically saying is it needs to fit within these parameters to actually run. If somebody gives me something that is outside of these parameters, don't actually send this through. Just stop the automation right here. So for the condition, we can click in, and because this is going to be working hours, I'm going to go for time of call. Once again, we need to make sure that we click down and we actually get the answer that is given, the value right here. So we can drop this in, and in here, this is where we can choose the filter. So we have text filters right here. As an example, let's just say that I'm asking, what country are you in? And I only want to accept people from the United States. Well, in here, I would go to text operators and we can say equal to maybe United States. Another one for this could be maybe contains case insensitive. That would probably be the best. We could set that right there. But we can go down. We have numeric operators. So if it's greater than a certain number, if it's less than a certain number. But the one I'm going to go to is time. So for this, for time, I'm going to say that the time is greater than, and then for this, I'm going to say 8 a.m., right? The time needs to be more than 8 a.m. It can't be any earlier. Then I'm going to add a rule, and for this, I'm going to add my cutoff. So once again, we can click in. We want the value of the time of call, and then instead of greater than, I'm going to say less than, and this is going to be 10 o'clock. So I'm going to type this military time because this works on a 24-hour time frame. So I'm essentially saying the time that somebody books a call needs to be between 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock. Otherwise, like, don't bring this over. I'm not going to be taking that call. So we can drop that in right there and click on OK. And now that filter is going to be added. So if I go back over to my form right here, and let's go ahead and fill this out. So I'm going to fill this in just as I did before, but the only difference is I'm going to book this call at 12 o'clock at night, right? I don't want to be taking calls in this area. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to submit this. If we go back over to make and we click on run right here, this is going to run exactly what we just entered. And as you can see, we can already see this. Because this didn't turn green, we can see this got caught in the filter, right? We can see the answer right here. And the reason that this was filtered is because it didn't fit into these categories. So if I go back to my calendar, look at this. We don't have anything on here. I can refresh, nothing is going to show up because this was caught in the filter right here. Now, another thing that we can do is we can add something called a router. And what a router is going to do is it's like if else, so yes or no. So what I could say in here is if we get to this filter once again, and they were accepted for a call, I want to send them an email saying that they were accepted, and I want to book them on my Google Calendar. If they didn't get accepted, then I want to send them a different email saying, hey, this wasn't accepted, you booked at the wrong time, these are actually my working hours, you can book again. So what I'm going to do to actually show you this is go here and I'm just going to unlink the current automation that we have, and I will just leave this floating around for a second, we will grab this later. But what I'm now going to do is go to the middle right here and add another module, and for this module, we can call this a router. So we can select the router right here. And as you can see, we now have two responses. So when somebody comes into this, the two options that we have is yes, accepted, and then sent to a Google Calendar. I'll actually link this in a second, not right now. Or no, you didn't get accepted. Here's an email explaining why. So for this first one, we are going to go up and we can go in here and say Gmail to send an email. So I want to send an email to this person. We can go ahead and create a connection right here. And just like this is now going to be added. So we can go to add a recipient right here, and we can choose the email address that they filled in on the form. So I'm going to go to email. We once again want to drop all of this down and go to value. We can then choose the subject for this email. So we would just type this in right here. We could maybe say call booking confirmation, just like that. And then in the content, we can use a combination of both typing and some of these answers. So what I could do is I could say, hey, and then the person's name. So we go to name, grab the value right here. And then this is super important when it comes to emails. The way that we actually add a break, because usually in an email, you would expect it to be like this, right? Where we have gaps between. Well, make doesn't actually register this. It would just send this all as like one long paragraph. So to actually add breaks in, we need to put this symbol, BR, this symbol, BR, this symbol. So it should look like this. And now it knows to break this up. So we could say, hey name, your call has been confirmed. You get the idea. We would type that in right there. We can also add an attachment if you would like to. In here, it might also be a good idea to add the call link. We might add the call link in here as well. And then once that has been set up, we can click on OK and continue. Then for the second email down here, basically the rejection one, why your call hasn't been accepted, well, we just go to Gmail once again. Then we can send an email, add a recipient and do the exact same thing. So we just go in, email, and grab the value. And then we can say call booking unsuccessful, just like that. And then once again, we can go down here and type out the content. So we click on OK right there. Now, the real power of the router comes from actually being able to set filters right here. So what we can do is we can go to this tab right here at the top, and this is where we actually want to set the filter. Because if you remember, the filter is if it fits into this category, then we send it up here. So we are going to set the exact same thing that we did last time, where we can call this work hours. Then do you want to set this route as a fallback? Very important that we set this to no, because this is essentially going to send any data through that didn't go through the other route. So we need to make sure that the one we set the filter to is on no. Then we will go here, and once again, we can go for the time of the call, just like that. Then we are going to go down to the time, just like we did last time, and say that this needs to be greater than 8 a.m. Then we can add an and rule. Once again, the value needs to be less than 10 o'clock. Then we can click on OK. So now they have been set up. All I am now going to do is connect up the Google Calendar to this top integration right here. So they go up. If they are accepted, they receive an email. Then this is booked on my Google Calendar. If they don't, then they get the rejection email and this is not put on my Google Calendar. We will set this for tomorrow and we will say this is an 11 a.m. call. For this, I'm actually going to set this to one of my actual emails so that you can see the email come through. I will show you how this will look. And then we can go ahead and click on submit. Now, if we go back to make and we click on run and we run this, you should see it goes through the top option right here. Then if I go over to, for some reason my calendar is not open, but if I open my calendar right here, we can see Jacob Welburn is scheduled for 11 a.m. Then if I go into my email, we can see the email right here from Riley, booking call confirmation, and we have the email right here. Then let's test this out and just make sure this works. If somebody books a call outside of our working hours, let's go for 12 a.m. We will enter in the same email to see how this looks. And we will go ahead and try to book in this call. So now if we go ahead and run this, we can see it goes to the bottom version this time. This will not be booked on my calendar if we go ahead and refresh. And if I now go back to my email, we can see call booking unsuccessful right here. And then I received the email. So that is how you can use make.com as a complete beginner. If you found this video valuable, don't forget to smash that like button and tap that subscribe button. And until next time, take it easy.